I was halfway through my second cup of coffee, staring at the cracked photo of June smiling in front of our old garage, when my phone buzzed with a message that didn't make sense. Leave now. Don't drink. Don't sign anything. No name. No context. Just those words glowing on the screen like a warning siren. At that exact moment, I was parked at the curb of my daughter Jessica's perfect new house, an hour outside Indianapolis, trying to summon the courage to walk through the front door. I hadn't seen her in over a year, not since our last screaming match about selling the garage, and when she'd called last week saying, "Dad, let's start fresh, come for dinner, just us," I thought maybe, just maybe, the walls we'd built between us were finally coming down. But that text, it froze me. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button if you're new here, and let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Your city, your state, even your country. I always love hearing from you, and I want to know, what would you do if you got a message like that, right before walking into a family dinner? Would you ignore it or trust your gut? I told myself it was probably a mistake, some wrong number, and slid the phone into my jacket pocket. But even as I walked up the flagstone path to Jessica's front porch, the unease followed me like a shadow. The house looked like it had been cut out of a magazine. White columns, spotless windows, a shiny black SUV in the driveway. It smelled faintly of new paint and money, the kind of money a girl from a blue-collar town like ours didn't usually see unless she'd hit the lottery. When the door opened, Jessica's smile was almost too bright. She hugged me like she was 8 again, like we hadn't spent years hurting each other with sharp words and longer silences. "Dad, you made it," she said, her voice soft but tight, the way you talk when you're trying to keep something steady. Then Mark appeared behind her, my son-in-law, looking sharp in a starched white shirt and that fake grin people wear when they're about to sell you something. "Eli," he said, like we were old friends, like he hadn't once told me I should have sold my garage 10 years ago because small-town shops don't have a future. I told myself to keep it together, to make this work for Jessica's sake. Inside, everything gleamed. Granite counters, stainless steel appliances, walls painted in those calm, neutral shades you see in open houses. It was a world away from my little place in Greenwood, where the scent of motor oil still clings to the walls and June's old wind chimes rattle on the back porch when the wind picks up. "Come on in," Jessica said, taking my coat like a polite stranger. "We poured you a drink already. Your favorite, neat." I followed her to the dining room, trying to shake off that feeling crawling up my spine. The table was set perfectly. Every fork and knife lined up like soldiers, candles flickering in glass holders, the smell of roast beef filling the air. Mark handed me a glass of bourbon, amber liquid catching the light. "To family," he said, holding up his own glass. I started to raise mine but stopped, just for a second, as the phone in my pocket buzzed again. The same number, the same message. "Leave now. Don't drink. Don't sign anything." I forced a smile and lowered the glass to the table, hoping neither of them noticed. Something about the way Mark was watching me, not quite smiling, not quite blinking, made my stomach turn. I've learned, after 65 years of life and a lifetime of fixing broken engines and broken promises, that a man knows when something isn't right, and in that moment, everything felt wrong. But here's the thing. I wanted to believe this dinner was real. I wanted to believe my daughter meant it when she said she wanted to start over, that maybe we could sit at a table and just be a family again. What I didn't know, standing there with my hand still wrapped around that glass, was that walking into that house would be the first step into the most dangerous night of my life. I settled into the chair Jessica had pulled out for me, the bourbon glass still resting untouched by my plate. She sat across from me, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, her smile a little too perfect, a little too rehearsed. Mark moved around the table with the ease of someone who'd claimed the space as his own, straightening napkins that didn't need straightening, adjusting the candles like he was preparing for a photo shoot. "I can't believe you finally came, Dad," Jessica said, her voice soft, almost fragile, like she was trying to convince herself as much as me. "I know things haven't been easy, but tonight, this is our second chance." Her words should have warmed me, but there was a sharpness under them, like a splinter pressing into skin. Mark returned to the table with a leather folder in his hand and placed it gently by my plate, sliding it toward me with 2 fingers. "Just something small to take care of, Eli," he said with a smoothness that didn't match the storm in his eyes. "Some health paperwork, power of attorney, the usual stuff people handle at your age. Nothing big, just precautionary. We want to make sure you're covered if anything ever happens." My throat tightened. I'd been around long enough to know when something was being sold, and this had all the polish of a pitch. I didn't even open the folder, just stared at it, tracing the edge of the leather with my finger. "This is sudden," I said, keeping my voice steady. Jessica leaned forward, elbows on the table, her expression a mix of frustration and pleading. "Dad, please, don't make this harder than it has to be. You've been so stubborn for so long. Mark and I, we just want to help. You've done enough on your own. Let us take some of that weight off your shoulders." The guilt hit like a punch. I thought about all the nights I'd missed when she was a kid, the recitals I'd skipped because some customer's car broke down, the times I'd come home covered in grease, too tired to talk, the years after her mother died when I thought burying myself in work was the only way to keep us afloat. Mark filled my glass without asking, his hands steady, his eyes sharp. "You worked your whole life, Eli," he said smoothly. "Built something from nothing. But times have changed. You don't want to see all that hard work disappear, do you? Sign these papers. Let us handle the logistics. You'll thank us later." There was something in the way he said logistics that made my skin crawl, like I was just another asset to be managed, not a father, not a man. My fingers tightened around the glass, but I didn't drink. Instead, I looked at Jessica, my little girl, now a grown woman staring at me with an expression I couldn't read, part desperation, part something colder. The dinner went on in a strange, stilted rhythm. Jessica asked polite questions about the garage, about the few friends I still saw in town, but her eyes kept darting to the folder like it was the star of the show. I'd been around long enough to know when something was being sold, and this had all the polish of a pitch. I didn't even open the folder, just stared at it, tracing the edge of the leather with my finger. "This is sudden," I said, keeping my voice steady. Jessica leaned forward, elbows on the table, her expression a mix of frustration and pleading. "Dad, please, don't make this harder than it has to be. You've been so stubborn for so long. Mark and I, we just want to help. You've done enough on your own. Let us take some of that weight off your shoulders." The guilt hit like a punch. I thought about all the nights I'd missed when she was a kid, the recitals I'd skipped because some customer's car broke down, the times I'd come home covered in grease, too tired to talk, the years after her mother died when I thought burying myself in work was the only way to keep us afloat. Mark filled my glass without asking, his hands steady, his eyes sharp. "You worked your whole life, Eli," he said smoothly. "Built something from nothing. But times have changed. You don't want to see all that hard work disappear, do you? Sign these papers. Let us handle the logistics. You'll thank us later." There was something in the way he said logistics that made my skin crawl, like I was just another asset to be managed, not a father, not a man. My fingers tightened around the glass, but I didn't drink. Instead, I looked at Jessica, my little girl, now a grown woman staring at me with an expression I couldn't read, part desperation, part something colder. The dinner went on in a strange, stilted rhythm. Jessica asked polite questions about the garage, about the few friends I still saw in town, but her eyes kept darting to the folder like it was the star of the show. I sat there in that perfect dining room, surrounded by candlelight and the smell of roast beef, looking at my daughter, my only child, and wondering how the hell we had gotten here. Wondering what I had missed, what I hadn't seen, that brought us to a night where trust felt like a weapon, pointed right at me. I excused myself from the table with a smile that felt like it had been painted on, muttering something about needing to take a call. Jessica nodded, her face still warm but her hands clenching the napkin in her lap, and Mark gave me that thin, sharp grin again, like a man already counting his winnings. My phone was still buzzing in my pocket as I stepped out through the sliding glass door into the quiet of their manicured backyard. The air smelled of cedar mulch and chlorine from the glowing pool, a false calm over the pounding in my chest. I pulled the phone out, and there it was again. The same unknown number, the same warning. Leave now. Don't drink. Don't sign anything. This time, though, a second message followed. Walk to the corner. Call me. It's not safe inside. My hand shook as I typed back, but something in me, maybe years of working alone in that garage, trusting my gut when a motor didn't sound right, told me to listen. I walked the length of their perfect yard, past the trimmed hedges and glowing path lights, past the gate that clicked softly behind me, and didn't stop until the house was just a shape in the distance. When I reached the corner, I hit call. The voice that answered was steady, low, and urgent. Mr. Thompson, my name's Dana. I live 2 houses down. Listen carefully. They've been planning this for weeks. Don't go back inside until you hear me out. I leaned against a street lamp, gripping the cold metal like it could hold me steady. Who are you? How do you even know me? There was a pause, the quiet hum of static. I handle smart home installations, cameras, security systems, voice control. They hired me a month ago. They didn't realize their open mic commands were logging to the server. I heard everything. My stomach dropped. Everything? I asked, already knowing the answer. Enough, Dana said. They've been looking for a way to get your signature, something clean, something they could use in court. Tonight, they laced your bourbon with something that'll make you compliant, but lucid enough to sign whatever they put in front of you. Power of attorney, transfer of assets, the garage, your accounts, all of it. I froze, my breath clouding in the cool night air. That perfect house, that perfect smile from my daughter, the folder by my plate, it all clicked together like pieces in a cruel puzzle. Why are you telling me this? I managed. Another pause, softer this time. Because I watched my uncle lose everything the same way. They called it love and care, but it was just greed. And because you're not like the people they think you are, you're careful. You still have a chance to stop this if you stay sharp. I took a slow breath, fighting down the sick feeling crawling up my throat. What do I do? Dana didn't hesitate. First, don't confront them. That's what they're hoping for. You leave quietly. Get home. Lock everything down. Accounts, deeds, every scrap of paperwork you've got. Tomorrow morning, we start collecting proof. I have backups of the audio and the system logs, but Mark is wiping things fast. We're on borrowed time. I walked until my legs started to ache. My phone pressed to my ear as Dana laid out the basics. Burner phones, duplicate copies of anything important, a lawyer she trusted downtown. Her voice was calm, precise, like a mechanic talking me through a repair. This only works if you stay steady, she said. They think you're alone, that you won't see it coming. That's your advantage. By the time I called for a rideshare back to my place, the house was dark behind me, windows glowing faintly like a set piece from a stage I'd just walked off. The drive home felt endless, headlights painting long shadows over fields I'd driven past 1,000 times. But that night they looked different, sharper, like they were warning me that the quiet life I'd built since June died was gone. When I pulled into my driveway, the familiar sight of the old garage sign, Thompson's Auto, honest work, honest prices, steadied me. Inside, I sat at the kitchen table, spreading out bank statements, the deed to the shop, every document that mattered. My hands still shook, but the panic had started to burn off, replaced by something colder, sharper. I wasn't going to be their victim. By midnight, Dana had sent me an encrypted folder of files, recordings, time-stamped logs, even camera clips of Mark rehearsing what he'd say when I finally gave in. Watching him in that crisp shirt, practicing lines like a bad actor, "Dad, this is just for your safety. You can trust me," made my stomach turn, but it also lit something in me I hadn't felt in years. A quiet, coiled anger. At 2 a.m, I called my lawyer, left a voicemail that said only, "Call me first thing. It's urgent." Then I sat there, staring at the photo of June on the fridge, her smile frozen in time. "I should have been better," I whispered, my voice catching in the quiet kitchen. "But I won't let them take what we built." The wind outside rattled the old chimes on the porch, the same sound that used to tell me June was home, and I made myself a promise right there in that dim kitchen. I was done waiting. If they thought I'd roll over, they didn't know me at all. The next morning started with the sharp trill of my phone vibrating against the kitchen table, breaking what little sleep I'd managed. 6 missed calls, 4 from Jessica, two from Mark, each voicemail shorter and sharper than the last. Dad, call me back, please. Then Mark's clipped tone, controlled but simmering. Eli, we need to talk. This is a family matter. Don't make this more complicated than it needs to be. I sat there in the half-light of dawn, coffee growing cold in my hands, staring at the phone until it stopped ringing. I knew better than to answer. Not yet. By 9 a.m., Dana was parked in my driveway in a faded blue pickup, a laptop bag slung over her shoulder and eyes that told me she hadn't slept either. She spread out her equipment on my kitchen table like a field medic, wires and external drives spilling across the surface next to June's old ceramic sugar jar. They're wiping their servers, she said without preamble, her voice tight but steady. I managed to clone a few backups, but Mark knows what he's doing. He's erasing anything that ties him to this plan. We need more time, but we don't have it. We spent the morning going through what we had, clipped audio of Mark and Jessica rehearsing what to say, a screen grab of the asset transfer forms half filled out with my name. It was enough to raise questions, but not enough to shut them down. We need undeniable proof, Dana muttered, fingers flying across her keyboard. Video, clear audio, signatures, something they can't explain away. Otherwise, the moment this hits court, it'll be their word against yours, and I've seen too many men in your position lose everything. Before noon, my phone buzzed again, this time a text, just 2 words. Call me. I stared at it, jaw tight, until Dana shook her head. Not yet, she said. They're fishing for a reaction. The longer you stay quiet, the more nervous they get. Let them think you're backing off. Fear makes people sloppy. By afternoon, the pressure was closing in. A black SUV rolled slow past my house twice, windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. My stomach dropped when I saw the sharp edge of Mark's jaw behind the wheel the second time. They're watching, I said, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. Dana glanced through the blinds, her face unreadable. Then we make it look like you're exactly where they want you, isolated and scared, she said. But inside, we're building your shield. I tried to focus, to stay steady as Dana coached me through securing my accounts and freezing access on the shop's assets. But it was hard to think straight with Jessica's texts coming in every hour. Dad, please, just talk to me. You're overreacting. Then finally, if you don't sign soon, you're going to regret it. That one twisted something deep in my chest. Maybe she doesn't know how deep this goes, I said quietly, more to myself than to Dana. Maybe she thinks she's helping. Dana looked up from her laptop, eyes sharp. Eli, I've been doing this a long time. People don't rehearse betrayal lines by accident. She knows. She's just telling herself a story that makes her feel less guilty. Video, clear audio, signatures, something they can't explain away. Otherwise, the moment this hits court, it'll be their word against yours, and I've seen too many men in your position lose everything. Before noon, my phone buzzed again, this time a text, just 2 words. Call me. I stared at it, jaw tight, until Dana shook her head. Not yet, she said. They're fishing for a reaction. The longer you stay quiet, the more nervous they get. Let them think you're backing off. Fear makes people sloppy. By afternoon, the pressure was closing in. A black SUV rolled slow past my house twice, windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. My stomach dropped when I saw the sharp edge of Mark's jaw behind the wheel the second time. They're watching, I said, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. Dana glanced through the blinds, her face unreadable. Then we make it look like you're exactly where they want you, isolated and scared, she said. But inside, we're building your shield. I tried to focus, to stay steady as Dana coached me through securing my accounts and freezing access on the shop's assets. But it was hard to think straight with Jessica's texts coming in every hour. Dad, please, just talk to me. You're overreacting. Then finally, if you don't sign soon, you're going to regret it. That one twisted something deep in my chest. Maybe she doesn't know how deep this goes, I said quietly, more to myself than to Dana. Maybe she thinks she's helping. Dana looked up from her laptop, eyes sharp. Eli, I've been doing this a long time. People don't rehearse betrayal lines by accident. She knows. She's just telling herself a story that makes her feel less guilty. But it's the only way to get what we need. You go back. Act normal. Let them think they've still got you. And when they think you're ready to sign, we'll have eyes and ears everywhere. I stared at her, the weight of it settling heavy in my chest. Going back meant walking straight into their hands, letting them think they were in control. But if it worked, if we could catch them in their own trap, it would end this. "You're asking me to sit in that house," I said slowly, "with my daughter, knowing she's part of this." Dana didn't flinch. "I'm asking you to take back your life, Eli, on your terms." And for the first time since that night, I didn't just feel fear. I felt anger, sharp and clean. They'd underestimated me. That was their first mistake. The next evening, I drove back down that quiet suburban street, headlights bouncing off polished mailboxes and perfectly trimmed lawns, every part of me screaming to turn around. But Dana's voice echoed in my head. "Stay steady. Let them think you're theirs." Her truck idled 2 blocks away, laptop open, a quiet digital lifeline. Tiny cameras disguised as shirt buttons were live streaming everything to her tablet. I killed the engine in front of Jessica's house, the weight of June's photo still in my wallet, and forced my hands to unclench before walking up the path. The porch light flicked on like an automatic cue. Jessica opened the door, her smile practiced but not quite reaching her eyes. "Dad," she said, a little too brightly, "I'm so glad you came back. I was worried." Her voice trembled just enough to make me wonder if a piece of her, some small part, still believed this was just about helping me. Inside, the table was set again. Different meal, same staging. Roast chicken, green beans, a fresh bottle of bourbon glinting under the lights like bait. Mark stood at the far end, leaning casually against the counter, his grin sharp enough to cut glass. "Eli," he said smoothly, "we just want to clear the air tonight. Start fresh. Put this whole misunderstanding behind us." I smiled like I believed him, like I hadn't listened to hours of recorded conversations where he called me an old fool and practiced his lines about family and trust. "That sounds good," I said, taking my seat. My heart hammered so hard I thought they'd hear it. Dinner passed in quiet tension. Jessica talked in soft circles about family and forgiveness, her voice cracking when she mentioned June, like she knew exactly which old wound to press. Mark stayed quiet at first, sipping his drink, watching me, waiting. When the plates were cleared, he finally moved, stepping into the room with that leather folder tucked under his arm. He set it gently in front of me, his voice smooth and careful. "Just sign here, Eli. Let us help you. It's just paperwork, nothing more." I reached for the pen, my hand steady, and flipped open the folder. Pages of legal jargon stared back at me, the lines for my signature neatly flagged with yellow tabs. "I appreciate this," I said evenly, my voice calm enough to fool even myself. "I really do." From her vantage point in the truck, Dana's voice came through the tiny earpiece tucked into my collar. "Wait for the tell, Eli. Don't rush. Make him talk." I tapped the pen lightly against the paper, feigning confusion. "You know, Mark, I've been thinking, maybe I should have someone look at this. My lawyer, maybe, just to make sure I understand everything." The mask cracked just for a moment. Mark's jaw tightened, his smile thinning. "Eli," he said, the smoothness slipping into something sharper, "you don't need a lawyer. This is just family business. It's better if we handle it ourselves. Quick, quiet." Jessica's hand touched my arm, her fingers trembling. "Dad, please, don't make this harder. We're just trying to do what's best for you, for the garage, for everything you built." I looked down at her hand, then back up at her, and something in me hardened. "You know what, Jess?" I said softly. "You're right. I built that garage, with your mother, with my hands, and I know when someone's trying to strip a man down to nothing." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. That's when I leaned back, reached into my jacket pocket, and pulled out the tiny UV flashlight Dana had given me. I flicked it on and tilted my untouched glass toward the light. The bourbon glowed faintly, a sickly halo swirling at the bottom. Gasps filled the silence. Jessica's sharp and panicked, Mark's low and angry. "You think I don't know what you've been doing?" My voice was calm, colder than I'd ever heard it. "Every word you rehearsed, every file you tried to wipe, every ounce of poison you thought you could pour into me." Mark stepped forward, anger flashing across his face. "You don't know what you're talking about, old man. You're confused. This is—" "No," I cut him off, standing slowly. "This is over." Right on cue, the front door burst open. 2 uniformed officers stepped inside, followed by Detective Harris and my lawyer, Delaney, sharp in her Navy suit. The room froze. Jessica's fork clattered against the table. Mark went pale. "Mark Caldwell," Harris said, voice steady as a judge. "You're under arrest for attempted fraud, elder abuse, and criminal conspiracy." "What?" Jessica's voice cracked, breaking into a sob. "No, you don't understand. This isn't what it looks like." Delaney laid a hand on my shoulder, her tone cool and professional. "They have everything, Eli. The recordings, the logs, the wiped files Dana recovered. It's airtight." Mark lunged, fury replacing shock, but the officers pinned him easily, his wrists cuffed in seconds. "You think this ends here, Eli?" he spat, eyes wild. "You think you can just—" I stepped closer, close enough to see the sweat beating at his temple. "No, Mark," I said, voice low and steady. "This ends exactly how it should, with you learning that you don't take what isn't yours. Not from me. Not ever." Jessica collapsed into a chair, her face pale, tears streaking down her cheeks. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a moment I thought I saw the little girl I used to carry on my shoulders. But that moment passed as quickly as it came. As they led Mark out, the neighbors had already begun to gather on their porches, whispers cutting through the cool night air. And there I stood, in the middle of their perfect home, my heart pounding, the weight of it all settling like lead in my chest. From the earpiece, Dana's voice was quiet but steady. "It's done, Eli. You're safe now." But safe didn't feel like the right word. Not yet. The next 48 hours blurred together in a way I'll never forget. Police interviews, statements, signatures on official paperwork, and questions that seemed to dig into every corner of my life. The garage, my accounts, every dollar I'd saved since I was a teenager sweeping the floor of my uncle's shop. By the time they let me go home, the sun was coming up, painting the quiet streets gold, but my world felt gray and hollow. Mark was denied bail within hours. The charges were stacked high: attempted fraud, elder abuse, conspiracy to commit financial crimes, the kind of list that keeps a man in courtrooms for years. The detective told me quietly, "With the evidence your neighbor provided, the DA will push for the maximum sentence. He's looking at 10 to 15 minimum." Jessica wasn't in a cell, but she wasn't free either. Accessory to fraud. Conspiracy. Those were the words on her paperwork. When I saw her the next morning, sitting in a sterile interrogation room with her makeup smudged and her hair tangled, my first instinct was to hug her, to tell her it would be okay. But then I remembered the look in her eyes at that dinner table, the calculation, the rehearsed lines, and my hands stayed at my sides. "Dad," she whispered, her voice small, like the little girl I'd once carried on my shoulders after her first piano recital. "I didn't mean for it to get this far. I thought if I just helped Mark, if I just—" Her words broke into sobs. I was scared. We were drowning in debt. I didn't know what else to do. For a long moment, I just stared at her, the weight of her words pressing down on me. Part of me wanted to scream, to demand how she could look me in the eye and do what she'd done. But another part, the part that still saw my daughter in there somewhere, whispered for patience. "You had a choice, Jess," I said finally, my voice low but steady. "You could have come to me. You could have told me the truth, but you didn't. You chose this instead." She tried to explain, her words tripping over each other, how Mark promised it was just temporary, how he told her it was the only way to protect their future. None of it mattered. Intentions don't erase actions. I left the station that day with a simple promise to myself. I would protect what I'd built, not just for me, but for the memory of June, for the years we'd spent building an honest life together. Over the next week, I worked closely with Delaney, my lawyer, and Dana to lock everything down. Every account was frozen and resecured, every title double-checked and moved to a trust that couldn't be touched. Dana was relentless, setting up encrypted systems for the garage, teaching me how to spot phishing attempts, even installing cameras that she insisted would make the place bulletproof. "You're safe now," she said one night as we stood in the shop, the smell of motor oil thick in the air. Really safe. Safe. The word tasted strange in my mouth. I wasn't sure I'd ever feel that again. But I nodded, grateful. Mark's lawyers reached out through back channels, trying to negotiate, trying to find an angle that would soften the blow. I didn't respond. Delaney handled every call with the same calm professionalism, her voice like steel. "My client has nothing to say to you," she told them, again and again. Jessica was released on conditional bail, her movements tracked, her freedom a fraction of what it once was. She called me every night for a week, leaving voicemails I couldn't bring myself to delete, but couldn't bear to listen to either. Apologies, tears, promises that she didn't mean to hurt me. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But trust isn't something you rebuild with words alone. One afternoon, about 10 days after it all went down, Dana stopped by the garage with a manila folder. "This," she said, dropping it on the counter, "is everything you need to start over clean. Security, legal updates, even business planning if you want to expand." She hesitated, then added, "And I know you don't like to hear this, but you're not alone in this. You've got me, if you want the help." I looked at her, this woman who'd risked her own safety to warn me, who'd stood by me through every step of the nightmare, and for the first time in weeks I felt something close to steady. "Thank you," I said quietly. "I don't know if I'd still have my life without you." By the end of the month, the garage was humming again. The guys came back to work, customers stopped by with casseroles and coffee, and for a few hours a day, it almost felt normal. But then the phone would ring, and my chest would tighten, because normal doesn't just come back after something like this. When the court set a trial date, Delaney sat me down and walked me through what to expect. "It's going to be hard, Eli," she said, her voice steady but not unkind. "You're going to have to look your daughter in the eye and tell the truth, but the truth is the only way you win." That night, I sat on my porch, June's wind chimes clinking softly in the breeze, and thought about what winning even meant. It wasn't about the money anymore. It wasn't about the garage. It was about drawing a line, for me, for June, for the man I wanted to be moving forward. When I finally answered one of Jessica's calls, the silence on the line was thick before her voice broke it. "Dad," she said softly, "I'm sorry. I know you don't believe me, but I am. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I hope, maybe someday you'll let me try to make it right." I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just told her the truth. "This is going to take time, Jess, a long time. And it's not just words I need. It's proof, actions. Until then, I'll keep the line open." It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start, the kind that came with boundaries and a quiet strength I hadn't known I still had. The trial came and went like a storm you know is coming, but can't quite prepare for. Mark sat stone-faced in his tailored suit, his lawyers whispering in his ear, but the recordings, the wiped servers, the poisoned glass under the UV light, they left no room for his usual charm or excuses. He was sentenced to 12 years, with no chance of parole for at least 8. When the judge read the verdict, I didn't feel triumph, just a deep, quiet sadness for the man my daughter had trusted and for the family we'd all lost long before that night. Jessica took a plea. She avoided prison by agreeing to full restitution, 5 years of probation, and mandatory counseling. I watched her cry as the gavel came down, watched her shake as she realized what starting over really meant. And for the first time, I didn't rush to comfort her. I just looked at her and said, "You have to fix this yourself, Jess. This time, you have to be the one to do the work." In the weeks that followed, I threw myself back into the garage. Work was steady, almost comforting. The hum of engines, the smell of grease and steel, it reminded me that some things don't change, no matter how hard life tries to tear them apart. Dana became a regular fixture around the shop, updating systems, teaching me how to manage accounts with the same ease I'd once used to rebuild carburetors. One evening, as we locked up, she turned to me and said, "You know, you should think about reopening the community nights. Teach the kids what you know. That shop saved my uncle once." So I did. By spring, Tuesday nights at Thompson's Auto became open garage nights. Teenagers from the high school showed up in worn out sneakers and baseball caps, eager to learn how to change oil, fix belts, rebuild engines. There was laughter again, the kind that bounces off the walls and makes you forget for a moment how heavy life can be. And standing there, showing some kid how to tighten a bolt, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: purpose. Jessica called occasionally. At first, I let the calls go to voicemail. Then slowly I started answering. Our conversations were careful, clipped, but honest. She never made excuses anymore, never asked for anything. Just updates on her counseling, quiet apologies, and stories about the volunteer work she'd started doing at a women's shelter. I didn't tell her, but hearing her talk like that, with a softness I hadn't heard in years, gave me hope that maybe, someday, the pieces could fit back together, even if the cracks would always show. One warm Sunday morning, she drove up to the shop. She didn't come in, just sat in her car for a while, then walked to the front steps and left an envelope by the door. Inside was a handwritten letter, shaky penmanship, tear stains on the edges. She wrote about shame, about learning the difference between love and dependence, about the slow, painful process of rebuilding herself. At the bottom she'd written, "I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, Dad, but I'm not asking for that anymore. I just want you to know I love you, and I'm trying." I read it 3 times, folded it carefully, and slipped it into the pocket of my work jacket. I didn't call her that day, but I left the porch light on that night, the same way I used to when she was a teenager out past curfew. By the time summer rolled around, the shop felt alive again. Kids came by to learn, old friends stopped in to drink coffee and talk about the Colts, and the bell over the front door rang more times a day than I could count. Dana laughed more too, her voice echoing through the garage like music, and though neither of us said it out loud, I think we both knew we'd stumbled into something steady, something good. Sometimes, when the day wound down and the last car rolled out, I'd sit on the old bench out front, June's wind chimes clinking softly in the evening breeze. I'd think about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the fear, the anger, and the quiet strength it had taken to claw my way through it. What I've learned is this: love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's surrender. And I'm done surrendering. To fear, to guilt, to the voices that once told me I was too old or too tired to fight for myself. Forgiveness, I've learned, isn't a gift you hand out like candy. It's something you earn, brick by brick, through actions, through truth. Maybe one day Jessica and I will find our way back to something that looks like family again. Until then, I'll keep the porch light on and the garage doors open, because sometimes the best way to heal is to keep building. Not just engines, but a life worth living. And every night, as the sun dips below the horizon and the last echoes of the day fade, I sit there in the quiet, the hum of the town settling around me, and I think, June would have been proud. Proud that I didn't let them take what we built. Proud that I finally learned that the strongest walls are the ones you build, not to keep people out, but to keep yourself standing. At its heart, this story is about the quiet strength that comes from knowing your worth and refusing to let anyone, even the people you love most, take that away. Eli's journey shows us that family doesn't give anyone the right to cross your boundaries, and that love without respect isn't love at all. It reminds us how easy it is to stay silent when something feels wrong, convincing ourselves that keeping the peace is better than facing the storm. But the truth is, silence only feeds injustice, and trusting your instincts, even when it hurts, is often the first step to reclaiming your life. What makes this lesson so powerful is its universality. Whether it's a manipulative partner, a toxic family member, or a so-called friend, learning to protect yourself doesn't mean closing your heart. It means valuing yourself enough to demand honesty and accountability. And sometimes, in standing up for yourself, you find unexpected allies. People like Dana, who remind you that courage has a way of drawing good people close. For anyone who has ever been underestimated, used, or betrayed, this story is a quiet reminder that you can take your life back, piece by piece, and build something stronger than what was broken. If this story resonated with you, let us know in the comments. Share your thoughts or your own experiences with finding strength in the face of betrayal. Tap that like button to show your support, and subscribe so you don't miss the next powerful story about resilience, justice, and the complicated beauty of human relationships. Until next time, may you find peace in knowing that even after the deepest chaos, there's always a path to steady ground and a light left on, waiting for you.